Hi everyone, it's Samantha from the Dancing Soap Dish. I hope you're well. Take a look at these cool soap bars. So they look like they're just colored soap bars, but if we take a closer look, we can see that they're actually white soap bars that have a sponge on the top. Let's have a look from the side. See, the yellow part is the sponge and the white part is the soap. So it's basically one side of the soap bar is soap and the other side is this little cellulose sponge here. So these are compressed cellulose sponges. They're made from plant cellulose and they've been dried and compressed. And what you can do is you're supposed to add them to water and sort of rehydrate them, and they'll get a little bit thicker. And then you can use them to like take off your makeup or do some exfoliating or whatever you want to do with them. But I thought, how cool would it be if I could actually put these into a bar of soap? They're a very gentle exfoliator, not too rough, not as rough as a salt scrub or a sugar scrub. And I think they work really well. This project is part of my Tweak of the Week series, where I share with you everyday items that with a slight tweak can be used for soap making. You can find all of the Tweak of the Week projects in a special playlist on this channel. Okay, so let's take another look at these sponges. I bought a bunch of them online. These ones are colored, but you can get them in white or sort of like a natural color, which they're naturally sort of a beige color. Like I said, they've been dried and compressed, so they're actually quite thin. These pink ones here, they're a little bit smaller than the green, blue and yellow ones. A bit thinner too there, you can see. But there's different ones you can get. I chose round ones because I'm going to use a round soap mold, but they do come in other shapes. And like I said, what you're supposed to do is just take one, and then if you hydrate it in some water, as you can see, it turns into a squishy sponge that you can then use for whatever purpose. I've just moved these other sponges out of the way because I don't want them to get wet. Okay, so here it is. It's like I said, made from plant cellulose. It's a sponge. We all know this sort of sponge. You've probably seen a sponge like this before. A very gentle exfoliator. Certainly not as rough as like a natural loofah or, like I said, a salt scrub or a sugar scrub. I have very sensitive skin, and this one is very gentle for me, but it is also sort of firm enough to be able to buff away any of the dry or dead skin. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how you can add these sponges to your soap bars. I've chosen a round silicone soap mold, and the cavities are about the same size or slightly larger than the sponges that I'm going to be using. I also have some shea butter melt and pour soap base here. I am weighing out 350 grams to make 4 80-gram soap bars. If you're using Imperial, weigh out 12 ounces of soap base to make 4 3-ounce soap bars. So I'm just giving this a stir. I've given it a melt in the microwave. As you can see, there are a few little cubes left in it, but it was also starting to bubble up around the edges, so I really don't want to give it too much more heat. What I'm going to do is give it a really good stir and maybe just wait a little while, and those little cubes should just melt into the soap base with the heat that it's already at, or the temperature that it's already at. So just bear with me while I do that. I have here a blend of essential oils, a very calming and grounding blend that I am adding to my shea butter base. I'm going to stir that in. And once I've given that a good stir and sort of checked that I don't have any more of those little unmelted cubes left, I can't really feel any anymore. They do melt quite quickly. But I also don't want to take too long to start working with this soap because I don't want it to start setting up on me. But I think I'm happy with this. I can't feel any more lumps in it with the spoon, so I'm happy with that. And I've given my fragrance a good stir in. Just put my spoon over here. And I do have some isopropyl alcohol on hand, which I'll be using. I just gave the soap base a spray just to get rid of some of those surface bubbles. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to fill one cavity halfway. And then I'm going to pop my sponge into the soap and sort of give it a tap and give it some time for the sponge to sort of hydrate. There is water in Melt and Pour soap base, and the water will make the sponge expand. As you can see, there's a couple of the bubbles in there that have sort of bubbled up from inside the sponge too. And then once I'm sort of happy that my sponge has sort of soaked up enough of the soap base, then I use my spoon to push the sponge down to the very bottom of the mold cavity and just make sure that it's sitting on the mold there. I sort of flatten it out and push it down. And then I just give the soap another spray with isopropyl alcohol to get rid of all those bubbles that formed while I was doing that. Now, I've been making these for a while and I've tried a number of different ways to sort of incorporate the sponges. I mean, it may seem like common sense to actually just put the sponge in the bottom of the cavity and pour the soap over it. That's probably what I did the first time I did it, and it didn't work particularly well because, the top side of the sponge is exposed to the soap and it tries to expand, but the bottom part of the sponge is sort of just left with a pocket of air at the bottom of the mold cavity, and it tends to actually sort of pull the sponge out of shape, sort of pull the sponge into a cone shape, and then sometimes soap leaks underneath, but sometimes soap doesn't leak underneath. It just looks messy and unattractive. So that's why I do it this way. I have tried it a few different ways, and I found that filling up a half cavity with soap, putting your sponge into the soap and sort of letting the soap base soak into it, letting the sponge hydrate a bit, then pushing the sponge to the bottom of the cavity. Now I'm going to go back and top up the rest of these soaps. I don't have enough soap base to go all the way to the top of these soap cavities, but that's okay. I'm just going to make 4 even looking bars of soap here. And so that's how I recommend you incorporate the sponge into your soap bar. That is the sort of the best method that I found after trying a couple to make sure that it ends up where you want it. So there we go, just giving that one last spray now to get rid of those bubbles, and I'm going to set that aside to harden. Okay, so here we are. This is actually the next day and these soaps are well and truly set. So I'm going to pop them out of the mold. This one is the pink one here. Remember, the pink sponge was slightly smaller in diameter, so as you can see, I didn't manage to get it in the center of the cavity, but so it sort of looks got like a little bit of a crescent moon thing happening there, but that's okay. This one is the yellow again. So the yellow sponge was the perfect size for the cavity, and as you can see, that sponge is sitting flat on the bottom of the cavity there. So now that's become the top of the soap. It's got soap running all the way through it. It's like fully incorporated. This is the blue one here. As you can see, there's some areas where the soap got soaked up into the sponge, so there's no soap on the surface, but that's okay. That's still turned out quite well. Basically, you just want to make sure that that sponge is sitting nice and flat on the bottom. That's how they work the best. Here's the green one. Again, there's some little holes here and there where the sponge has soaked up that soap, but overall, I think they're looking pretty good. Okay, so let's compare how big the sponges are now to how they started. So as you can see with the pink sponge here, how sort of thin the compressed sponge is. It's no longer that thin because it has hydrated a bit in the soap. And that pink one is thin compared to the other colors too. So we'll have a look at another color now. Let's take a look at the green here. I might just pop it around the other side. There we go. So, yep, the green, you can see it's definitely thicker than it was, which shows me that it has hydrated a bit with the soap, which is good. And here again, the blue, the same thing. So I think that turned out quite well. So you've got one side soap, you've got one side sponge. So you can, soap up your arm with the soapy side, and then you can flip over to the spongy side, give the skin on your arm a really good exfoliating, a really gentle exfoliating, but it works quite well. And they really are just an excellent bar of soap. Okay, so now I want to talk a little bit about the best way to use these. So I have a bowl of lukewarm water here. I'm just going to start with this blue sponge. So it takes a couple of uses before you sort of wear away all of this thin layer of soap that's sort of sitting on top of the sponge. So, you know, the first time you use it, have a really good go at it and make sure you give it a really good wipe. Use it on the sponge side just to try and soften up the sponge a little bit. Get some of the stiff soap that's sitting on the surface out of it. Kind of try and work up a nice lather through the sponge, which is what I'm trying to do here. It can start off a little bit hard, but if you work at it, you'll find that it actually comes good quite quickly. So I'm just giving it a good wash underneath the water here. Let's try and work up a really nice lather here. So, you know, the melt and pour soap and this shea butter soap as well. Not so much a bubbly lather, but more like a really creamy lather. Though you can see some bubbles here. I'm just going to give it a really good go. As you can see, it's sort of like getting a really sort of creamy lather on my hands there. Just starting to sort of work away that top layer that was there. But yeah, you can give, you know, the back of your hands a good scrub. You can give them a wash with the soap, then turn it over and exfoliate with the sponge. I find as well, you know, if you're someone who finds soap bars really slippery and is constantly dropping them, these are so much easier to keep a hold of with the sponge side. You won't be dropping these at all. They're really great. And my kids love these bars too. You know, all the crazy wonderful soaps I make, and I'm like, hey kids, which soap do you want to use in the shower tonight? And they always pick the spongy one. They just really love it. All right, I think I'll take this one out now. But yeah, when you're storing it, make sure you store it, you know, on your soap saver or on your soap dish with the sponge side facing up. It'll give the sponge a little bit of a chance to dry out between uses. Here's one I made a while ago. I actually used a transparent soap base and tinted it blue, so that's why it's that really dark blue color. But this is sort of mostly used here. I mean, I've used a lot of the soap. The soap is still stuck to the sponge. As you can see, I can also still, if I rub the sponge here, I generate a nice lather there through the sponge. The sponge hasn't come away from the soap, even though there's really only a small slither of soap left. It does stay attached. I mean, unless you forcefully try to pull it apart, which you can do when it's wet, but if you take good care not to do that, then the soap will absolutely stay stuck to the sponge all the way to the very end. Here is one that I have used up. As you can see, that sort of dark yellow color in the middle there is just a little bit of soap that's remaining stuck to this sponge. It did start out as a full-size soap bar, just like the other ones that I've made. As you can see, if I give it a rub, there's a little bit of a soap lather coming through there from the remaining soap. When they get to this stage, you can maybe retire them to the kitchen and use them in the kitchen for a while until they're sort of at their end of good use, and then you'll have to dispose of it. But that is sort of like a brief example of the life of an exfoliating soap sponge. Okay, so I really hope you enjoyed this unique tutorial, something a little bit different, but something very easy to do, very quick to do, and lots of fun. If you're looking for a nice gentle exfoliator to use with your favorite melt and pour soap base, these are a great idea. You can buy them easily online as well. Check out the links in the description of this video. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe if you love what I do. And until next time, enjoy.